single day.
I'll open up the public hearing. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this code enforcement citation process, please step forward, sign in, state your name for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Testing, I guess that's good. Before I start what I was going to say, I have a few comments on what was already said. You like to pretend that ordinances...
State your name for the record.
My name is David Kesselring. Thank you. You like to pretend that ordinances are law. They're not. Is that why you feel you can use the words could and flexibility in your ordinances? This is law by whim. This is very vague, and it does violate the vagueness doctrine, I believe, very much so. I believe it leaves you open to lawsuits and other things. It's totally wrong on top of that. But is this why you want to take the appeals out of the court system? Because this is all just fake? I don't know. But how do you believe these outlandish, perverse, unnatural actions you take are under the jurisdiction or fall under the jurisdiction of the Constitution? Most of the people you're fining are quite obviously not consenting to your fines, nor are they breaking any laws. Who benefits from these fines? How do they in any way benefit the people or the general welfare? Many others that care about their fellow man would object more strongly if they actually knew the harm you're doing to the people. Staff reports don't override our unalienable rights granted by our Creator. Staff reports don't override our unalienable rights granted by our Creator. The governing of this country was not instituted to benefit itself, the government, and to do extensive studies to find more efficient ways of absconding with the people's money. The only ones consenting to this are a few bureaucrats and lawyers that are attempting to influence you to change our laws and our form of government. You took an oath to be in office, you all did. You took an oath to the U.S. Constitution, and I agree with the oath. You took an oath to the Constitution, and I agree with that oath. You took an oath to the Constitution, and I agree with that oath. I wish you would adhere to the oath. If you do not, my wish is that you would resign. We're guaranteed a Republican form of government. This is not a Republican form of government if you don't represent me and the people. You're not representing me or the people with your unconstitutional code enforcement. What we have right now is a dictatorship. Attempting to change our form of government is sedition. You're committing sedition, which is an act of treason. The whole agenda is seditious. I shouldn't even have to be here to talk to you in the first place. This is why the state constitution protects my right to instruct you. You should be representing the natural law that you took an oath to follow. You should know natural law and be teaching it to all your employees. Just in case you missed my point, it is no to any form of code enforcement violation of the people. It is no to violations of the property rights of the people. It is no to stealing. It is and no to for-profit government. It is no to violations of any of our natural rights. You won't be hearing from my lawyer, but you might be hearing from the military one day. Here's a couple of items I would like to be addressed in your discussion, so take this down if you could. Please define ownership and tell us exactly who instructs your code enforcement officers, and does anyone instruct them on the natural law and the rights of the people? Do you believe that standard operating procedures override all natural and constitutional law? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wish hearing code enforcement citation process? Mr. Cullen, good morning.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. This is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners amending Chapter 1-1 of the county's Code of Laws and Ordinances by renaming and amending Section 1.115 and repealing in its entirety Section 1.2.101. So what this will do is repeal the reference to the Code Enforcement Board, which we have moved on to a special magistrate, change any references from the Code Enforcement Board to Special Magistrate, establish the qualifications for the Special Magistrate with respect to citations, create a hearing procedure for citation appeals, allow the Special Magistrate to hear citation appeals, and remove the notice period requirement prior to the issuance of a citation, meaning we can issue it immediately. One example of where this citation might be used, we'll use tree trimming, since tree trimming is an immediate and irreversible harm type of violation. No warning would be given and a citation could be issued. We could cite both the property owner as well as the person or the company doing the work. And when citing the company doing the work, property A would be the first offense. If we caught them doing another property, property B would be the second offense, and so on and so forth. The repeat violation is for any offenses within a 5-year period, and if someone improperly trims their trees in years 1 and 4, the trimming in year 4 would constitute the second offense. So with that, we're also doing a fee and violation schedule, and with that, the first violation would be $100. The current penalty is $25. It's very inefficient. The second violation would be $250, where the current penalty is $100. And the third violation would be the statutory max, which is $500, and any repeat violation would also be $500.
Commissioner Kasey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean, you said you could cite both the property owner as well as the person or company doing the work.
Correct.
Well, I mean, is that an option, or you would cite both the property owner and the company?
We have that option. It would probably be if it's something that's a repeat, we keep having it, or it's a contractor that we know, a tree trimming contractor that we know is going around telling people what they can and can't do, that they should know, but a homeowner might not have any idea they can't do that. We typically wouldn't cite a residential homeowner unless it's a second, third, fourth offense, something like that. A commercial violation, we would probably cite both the property owner and, if we can determine, the contractor or the person doing the trimming.
Okay, so it is at the discretion of code enforcement to cite both?
Correct.
Or either?
Correct.
Okay.
We don't want to punish somebody that just is unaware of it, but the contractors, the people doing the work, they're the ones that we're typically after. Business owners are typically held to a higher standard because they should know in more detail what the rules and regulations are with respect to their landscaping on their property, and so we might cite them as well as the trimming company, but not necessarily.
And the other question is, the way the code reads, if you have first, second, third violation, and then you have additional violations, does that, once you get a violation, I would like it to set the clock again. So in other words, if you have your first violation, you have 5 years. If 4 years later you get your second violation, you're now in another 5-year window. You've already set yourself up in another 5-year window. So the next year it's a third violation, and again another 5-year window. Every time you violate, you've reset the clock. You're in a new 5-year window, and now every violation at that point is $500, and it just keeps resetting the clock. Is that what the wording reflects right now, Ms. Knowlton? Because if it doesn't, I want to make that amendment.
Ms. Stacio, who was the author of this, she's in the audience. If you'd like, I can get through the rest of this and then answer all the questions, or I can have her step up now. It's your choice.
Finish your presentation. I'm fine with that.
Very good. Commissioner Deutsch.
A couple of questions on fines. You separated the tree thing.
We just use that as an example.
Because that's easy to use. I'm more concerned about a plumbing issue that might be a health issue, or I'm concerned about an electrical issue that could be potentially a fire issue. And I think we've got to take a look at this. Obviously we want everyone to have due process. But it seems to me that the process takes a long time and it's drawn out. So I just want to go back, and it makes sense that we look at this. I just want to go back to the fines. Do we separate the fines that are given through the magistrate now, or like these are trees and these are electrical, these are plumbing, do we do that?
Well, through the full-blown code enforcement process, where we would do a notice of violation, we would take them before the special magistrate. There's a separate fee ordinance. Those fines can go up to $15,000 per offense.
All right, let me back up then. How many, I don't even care the dollar amount, how many different fines are levied a year that are paid?
That's two different questions. We levy, the magistrate issues orders, affidavits of noncompliance, levying fines every month. How many of them are paid? They get, I don't have those numbers.
Okay, because, yeah, I'd like to see, Sean, I'd like to see some information on that, because the feeling that I get, and occasionally, you know, I'll look in, and it was more entertaining and better, I think, when we had the board, but that's another issue. I like the board, frankly. But, you know, when it seems like we give people a lot of chances
Correct.
to meet. I mean, we really are lenient. We give folks a lot of time to correct their violations.
Our goal is compliance. It's not to fine people.
No, I appreciate that, but I'd like to see some of the information on that. And also what I'd like to see us end up with, I'd like to see us sort of kind of prioritize something. If someone has a landscaping issue, that's fine, but that's not dangerous. I mean, yeah, we're not happy with it. They've broken the law. They're not consistent with, you know, with our codes. But I'm much more concerned about a health or a potential fire or something that could be dangerous to people. And I think we've got to look at them a little differently and perhaps be able to be maybe a little bit more aggressive with some of the major factors of code enforcement.
If I could, remember, this is one tool in our toolbox. We also have unsafe buildings, unsafe structure standards. We have contractor licensing board. We have our contractors, unlicensed contractors division, licensing division, where a lot of those items, because you are correct, those are more life safety, we can address those through other avenues. Typically, the items that we see before the magistrate would be junks, grasses, IPMC, International Property Maintenance Code violations, things of that nature, things that aren't life safety. Typically licensing or some other group or some other type of violation would address this. This citation process is more for the really smaller items, the quicker things, where we're out there on site and we catch somebody doing something and we can do this and it's actually a deterrent by stroking them.
I appreciate that. And I don't have any problem with giving someone an extra 6 months or whatever, or to empty the shed out and move it, or to get rid of the truck that they have parked illegally on that property. And I don't have any problem with those types and kinds of issues, even though the neighbors aren't happy with them. I'm much more concerned about the issues that are either going to affect health and or safety. Those are the issues, you know, that, not that the others aren't important and significant, those are the ones that I'm more concerned about moving on.
Periodically, we have pulled power to houses or properties if necessary. We just did one within the past year down in Minnesota Key where it was very severe electrical issues and many other issues. We went out and actually had the power disconnected. We do that if there's life safety issues. We also, if people are on water and sewer, we work with CCU if there's other issues. So there's, again, this is just one tool in our vast toolbox.
I understand that. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good, sir. Commissioner Trax.
I just wanted to clarify to Commissioner Constance's discussion that lines 90 through 98 indicate repeat violation. It means a violation or of a provision of a code or ordinance by a person who has been previously found through a code enforcement board or any other quasi-judicial or judicial process to have violated or who has admitted violating the same provision within 5 years prior to the violation, notwithstanding the violations occur at different locations. So it is a reset. It's a look back. If something happens today, they look back 5 years. Have they had another one? Have they had another one? So that's, I don't know what page that's on, but 3.
So, okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. But then does it also address the fact that whatever level they're at, they now have a 5-year period moving forward? That's a 5-year look back. Do they have a 5-year period moving forward? Every time they violate, does it reset that 5-year period looking forward?
I'd like Jean to speak to that one, just as she was the author of that one. Thank you. Sorry, Jean.
Jean Stacio, Assistant County Attorney. It would, because when you have that violation, any subsequent violation is going to look back, and that would be, you know, start the clock all over again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And it also counts admitted violations as something that if a property owner either pays the violation or is found in violation by the special magistrate, that would be considered one. So maybe it doesn't go through that quasi-judicial process, but if they pay it or fail to pay it and they're found guilty, then that would also restart the clock.
I have another question, Mr. Chairman. So let's say they don't violate both the property owner and the contractor, it's one or the other, but they are found to be in violation and they get a fine, they pay it. Does that tag both the property and the contractor, even though they weren't both?
No, that would just be whoever is either admitted or found to have violated through the special magistrate process.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sean, you got more to present? Or
Yes, I have a few more, excuse me, but if you'd like to ask questions, I'd be more than happy to. So essentially, in a nutshell, what this is doing, currently the citation process, as I said, it's $25 for a first violation. It would cost the county more for staff time to fight that in court if somebody were to appeal it, and we would not be willing to go down for $25 fine. This brings it more in line with the other fines and fees that we have throughout the county. Last time it was looked at was the late 90s, so again, this is bringing it in line with modern day, as well as making that appeal process for the property owner and for staff less arduous in that you don't have to go to county court to contest it. You can do that before the magistrate, which is once every month. You're not sitting around down at county court waiting for your turn on the docket that who knows how long that could take. We feel that this would actually make it more of a deterrent and more of an efficient process and a tool for staff. So with that, the schedule of violations include local business tax receipts. Somebody opens a business, but they haven't gotten their business tax receipt. Roadside peddling, garage sales. Now I'd like to clarify that because there's been a bit of misinformation out there in the public. We are not trying to shut down garage sales. This is for the people, and we've all seen them periodically, where they just kind of open up a business where they're having a garage sale every weekend out of their house and basically have opened a store on the weekends in their house. We are reactive, so we would go look at that if we got a complaint. We have had a few of them where we've had to address that through cease and desist orders with the magistrate. This will give us the opportunity to cite them via this and also to increase the fine so that that stops and so that they don't disrupt the neighborhood on the weekends. Again, it's not trying to shut down garage sales. That's one of the things that I've been hearing since a recent news report. So some building code items, hours of construction activity. So if somebody's running chainsaws or construction noise late or early, we can do that. Change in occupancy, which goes hand in hand with business tax receipt. We've had issues where people just start operating a business and they haven't gone through and done all their paperwork, make sure that they can do that. Placement of street numbers, just the gamut. So it's very, again, these are small violations that we're looking at, things that it's a one-time thing. We go out, we can cite them, and everyone moves on. So with that, staff is recommending approval, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Hey, Commissioners, before I open the public hearing, any comments or additional questions? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just real quick, I know you had used an example at the beginning of your slideshow regarding tree trimming, lollipopping or hacking, whatever, topping trees, so that is an immediate visible violation. Then you listed towards the end size and visibility of street numbers. I guess you're addressing you're required to have street numbers out on your sign on the pole where it's visible. Do you go out, I just want to be clear, your code enforcement people would go out and just give them a notice saying, hey, you're in violation, you have a certain time period to remedy the situation, and then you're good. This is only if that time is expired. So they've been given warning at no charge. The educational side of this is to bring them into compliance. Just want to be clear on that.
This gives flexibility, so we could do either. If it's something where we've told them already and they haven't done it, then we can cite them. But by taking away, if you, where's that one? It removes the notice period requirement prior to the issuance of a citation, but it doesn't mean that we can't give them It's just currently the citation process requires a warning. So we go to your business and you got flutter flags up or you have no street numbers. Right now we have to give you a warning. We then would cite you if you didn't fix it.
How many days on that?
I believe it's 30 days currently. Okay. So what it would do right now is, because say flutter flags or something simple, we don't have to do it. We can just say, hey, here's a ticket, remove your flags, that's your penalty, don't do it again. If you do it again, then we go to the 25, you do it again, 500, and continuous. Most people hopefully will take heed after the first one and not look at it as a cost of doing business type violation, which is what some people look at certain violations as now. And so we think that this give it a little more teeth in order to try and address this. And once word gets around, we think the violations will definitely lessen.
Yeah, so in terms of consistency, then, all the code enforcement officers know in those particular situations that's how it would be handled. But you mentioned there's discretion used in other situations. And that's where I'm just concerned, because if you have multiple officers going out there and some folks are given warnings when another one for the same offense might have been given a violation off the bat, how do you, because, you know, we want to make sure that all the folks are treated the same.
Right.
How do we continue to narrow that window so it's consistent all around for every violation?
Right. Standard operating procedures. We standardize through what we instruct our staff to do on how to implement. We have standard operating procedures for pretty much everything we do. But we also need to have discretion. That's something that code enforcement has always had, just like prosecutorial discretion for attorneys, prosecutors, things like that. We set up SOPs, but if something's truly egregious, we also have that ability where that code officer can make that judgment call on site. But typically what we would do is they would follow the SOP. So if the SOP is you give somebody 5 days with a warning and then you cite them if they haven't fixed it, or if that SOP is, you know, first violation is first violation and you cite them right then and there, or if it's, you know, some items that might be bigger than some others. So there's...
Yeah, the only reason I say it is because, you know, you mentioned, well, the business owner should know about his trees. I mean, yeah, that's true. Ultimately, somebody has to be responsible, and typically it's the property owner. But a lot of times these guys are running a business. They don't have a clue on proper horticultural procedures. Somebody comes in, I'll trim your trees. Some do, a lot don't. I just want to make sure the emphasis is always on the educational side of it to bring them into compliance, not on the fining or the side of it where, you know, we're levying these assessments. Because a lot of people out there, they just don't know until a code compliance officer comes up and says, hey, you're doing something wrong. And there are always those that obviously game the system. I mean, those people are out there too.
As I said earlier, we're not out to fine people to death. We just are looking for compliance and education, especially with the commercial officers that you've been so kind as to supply us with. We make sure that education is a very important thing. When it comes to residential, obviously we're much more lenient because most property owners aren't going to know all the regulations. They see somebody, they want their trees trimmed, they see an ad for somebody, and they call them over. They don't know if they're going to do a good job or a bad job. We want to make sure that those tree trimmers, and I'm just using that as an example, that they do a good job, that they know what they're doing. And so if we keep seeing repeat violator, tree trimmer A, that keeps doing this and keeps telling people, and that we want to make sure we hit them. But most homeowners there, they just don't realize that that's not a good way to do it. Or so we're not, on the residential side, we're always much more lenient. Commercial, we are a little stricter. Because again, that's where everyone sees, that's our commercial corridor, and the residential, it's based on neighborhood complaints. So.
Very good. Commissioner Constance.
Yeah, so in keeping with education, since this is not outlawing garage sales, what is a reasonable repeat time frame for doing a garage sale?
Code has specific criteria as to how many garage sales per year you can have. I believe it's 2 off the top of my head. So spring and fall typically is when we see them.
It's not monthly or quarterly, it's like a couple times a year.
That is
reasonable. Anybody beyond that kind of starts to...
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have had ones where it's literally been every weekend. And
Very good. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this code enforcement citation process, please step forward, sign in, state your name for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
Chairman, I see no one else rising. I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as soon as I find
I'm
it.
sorry.
I move an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Charlotte County, Florida, amending Charlotte County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1-1, General Ordinances and Special Acts, Section 1-1-15, entitled Enforcement of Local Codes, renaming Section 1-1-15, providing for contested code violation citations to be heard by the special magistrate, providing procedures for contesting code citations, providing the qualifications and jurisdiction for the appointed code enforcement special magistrate, providing for the collection of unpaid fines, repealing general ordinances and special acts, Chapter 1-2, Administration Article 4, Section 1-2-101, providing for inclusion in the Charlotte County Code, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And I also move the resolution as the attorney peers over my shoulder.
We have a motion. I'll second the motion. We have a motion, a second, to approve the ordinance and the resolution. Any discussion? Commissioner
Yes.
Deutsch? No.
Yeah, I'd like to specifically comment on that and respond to Mr. Kessering's comments, because I'd like to consider myself somewhat of a constitutionalist. And I'd agree with you, David, absolutely 100%, in a perfect world. Unfortunately, we don't have a perfect world. We don't have a situation where we honor and respect our neighbors, where we would like them to treat us as we treat them. So I'm going to give you a scenario to ponder, and I'm sure you'll get back to me on it. But you live in your house, and you have 3 neighbors, one on each side and one behind you. How would you address the issue without codes if the one on the left side decides that they're going to be repairing and fixing automobiles in their front yard, and there are 3 or 4 junk cars there, and they're working from early in the morning to late at night, banging away and pouring their oil on the ground and fixing the car? And let's say the neighbor on the other side of you has a septic system that's not working properly, and because it hasn't been taken care of, it's starting to overflow, and it's running into your property. And the last scenario, and we've had all of these happen, by the way. All of these have happened in the 8 years I've been here. David, and the last one is the guys behind you in their backyard, they've decided to have 15 of their best friends living and camping there and doing whatever they do to meet their bodily functions in their backyard behind you. So there's 3 neighbors. And each of those incidents are incidents that have happened and taken place in Charlotte County, and Sean knows about them because they've tried to address them. How would you deal with that and address that with your neighbors if we didn't have the codes? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Commissioner Truex?
Well, I wanted to speak a little bit towards some of the things that Max brought up, and in reference to, we have other options, obviously, to pursue some of those violations through unlicensed activity, violations of code. The fines are actually bigger, and if they're not licensed, then of course there's some other avenues people can pursue. So this isn't the end-all by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a tightening up of what we can do and a speed up of a process. I would also say that the educational side of it is something I do think is important. I agree with Ms. Fisher that we need to probably have a bit of a campaign through some of our press releases and things like that, trying to get it out there. And I do agree with the size of the print, just so you know. And I think that, in a perfect world, we wouldn't need ordinances to try to make sure that people acted accordingly. But the folks that have property rights are everybody. And the people that I hear from are the ones complaining about these issues, and we're not aggressive enough. I don't want to get overly aggressive, but I do think that we can make some improvements, and I do think that this will help us give another tool in the toolbox and a little bit more of a hammer, if you will, to those that want to not be good neighbors to their neighbors. Thank you.
Very good, sir. Commissioner Taseo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I've gotten more calls from citizens and taxpayers in this county as to why we're not enforcing our code more strictly. I've gotten a few calls from folks that say, hey, I got a violation, you're my commissioner, I want to talk about this, I have to go before the hearing examiner. The vast majority of folks call me because we're not enforcing aggressively enough. So when people come up to the mic and say they're speaking for the people, I'm not sure which people you're speaking for, because there's 180,000 people in this county. So if you want to speak for the people, I mean, I think the closest you get is the 5 of us, because we ran and put ourselves out there and people voted for us to use our judgment in executing the laws and ordinances and the Constitution that we took an oath to serve. So, you know, if you want to speak for the people, my first question is, what people are you speaking for? Because, you know, we're the ones that get the calls here at the county. And I'll tell you, there's been a lot of times I've had to tell people there's nothing we can do. People have property rights. They maybe didn't get over the threshold where we can say it's junk-like conditions. It may look like junk, or people's yards may be in such disrepair, but they haven't tripped a threshold where there's a life safety issue or a hazard issue. And people say, well, go on there and do something. I tell people all the time, look, people have property rights. People get to exercise their property rights, and I can't enforce a code because somebody wants to live like a slob. That's their right to do so. But there is a certain threshold that trips that it impacts the community, where it does become a life, health, or safety issue. And, you know, we have these codes, they seem to be working, and there's a balance, there's always a balance between property rights and these codes. But that's why we're here today, to talk about these things and see if we can maintain that balance going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good, sir. Again, I have a motion and a second to approve the, both the ordinance and the resolution related to code enforcement citation process. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Commissioners, we are now at citizen input, any county-related subject. Anyone wishing to address the board during this portion of the meeting must state their name for the record. Remarks on any county-related subject shall be limited to 3 minutes and shall be addressed to the Commission as a body and not to individual members. There will not be any discussion.
Hey, Sheriff County, this is Sheriff County COPWATCH. I am using any video here with under fair use if you have criticism, reporting, teaching, etc. And please donate. I do not make money from YouTube, and there are different ways to donate in the video links. Thanks.